Not 3, that's too much company.
Nailed it.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Two's Company, hosted by me, nutritional therapist Grace Kingswell, and cold water swimmer Sophie Hellyer. Just two good friends waxing lyrical on issues both weighty and frivolous, with a few obscure vagina facts thrown in along the way. We really hope you enjoyed episode 1. It was certainly a learning curve for Sophie and I. Making decisions as a team was very different to our normal working day of ourselves just being the boss all the time. And Sophie, I know you had some thoughts on this, if you want to share.
Yeah, for me, I was very nervous about episode 1, and if I'm completely honest, I was really, really anxious about it, and I spent a week being an anxious mess until those first few reviews came in and I started to relax a little bit. So thank you for the reviews. They really calm my nerves, and hopefully I'll be less anxious this time.
Yeah, we're so grateful that the reception's been good and that you guys have been enjoying the podcast. I think I certainly questioned why I wasn't anxious, and because you said to me, "Oh, you don't seem to care," and I thought maybe that's a bad thing, that I don't really worry about what I'm saying. But I think for me that the hard thing was, like I said, making those decisions as a team and really learning to work together to reach our end goal was just a lot of stress.
And for me, the stress was opening myself up to a whole world of potential criticism, which is a whole part and parcel of this podcast.
So anyway, in today's episode, we'll be discussing the lockdown cliche of getting a puppy, the Oprah interview with Meghan and Harry, along with things we've been reading, watching and enjoying this week, plus our regular segments of things we disagree on and vagina facts, and of course, the mailbag.
Like the first episode, this episode is sponsored by Treedom Trees, the first web platform in the world for planting a tree remotely and following its story online. The discount code is Two's Company in capital letters for 10% off at checkout on treedom.net. The code can be used once per person and expires at the end of 2021. Before we begin, we wanted to both mention that we're really saddened to hear the news of Sarah Everard. It really resonates with us both and is obviously a very deep and harrowing subject.
The epidemic of violence against women is something we both feel very strongly about and could talk for hours on. But at this difficult time, we particularly want to focus on a few tips that we've seen trending on Twitter regarding how men can be more aware of and more caring towards women who may be feeling vulnerable in public spaces.
Okay, so these are the ones that I saw on Twitter and on The Guardian and I personally felt were quite relevant and useful. 1, don't walk too closely behind a woman. Give her space to cross to the other side of the road. Don't block alleyways, underpasses and narrow pathways. 2, be audible. For instance, speaking on your phone or announcing, like runner or biker to the left, or runner just if you're coming up behind a woman so you don't surprise her and your presence is known. And 3, be an active bystander. Intervene if a situation looks odd or if someone looks scared or uncomfortable. Just going up to someone and saying like, "Hey, is that you, Jessica?" That could just save a really difficult situation.
And I think we've all been in those situations where we're a bit scared on the walk home and we just wanted to put those tips out there to see if they would be helpful. Sophie and I have discussed this and we may talk further about it at a later date, but as things unfold, we are going to leave it there for now. So let's get on with the episode.
Band meeting. Grace.
Present.
Sophie. Present.
You said your own name, idiot. I was supposed to do that.
I'm Murray. Anyway.
So, here we go. Puppies.
So, Grace hasn't seen much of me since the last episode. No. Mostly because I have a new 4-legged best friend.
Sophie has become the ultimate lockdown cliche. And no, she's not been baking banana bread, believe it or not.
No. We bought a puppy, which has been fun and amazing, and she's a little ball of joy, and she makes every day fun. However, I have had a slight existential crisis about the fact that we bought a dog instead of rescuing a dog. I've always been a massive advocate for rescuing, and now I'm suddenly on the other side of the fence, and I'm one of those people who has bought a dog in lockdown. So FYI, my justification, John, my partner has really severe allergies to dogs, and we had to get a hypoallergenic dog, which turns out he's still allergic to. But they're not very easy to rescue. But I think that it's basically made me realize how much I fear the judgment of people, similar to what I said about us releasing our first podcast episode. And also how I used to be that person who judged people for buying a dog instead of adopting. And to be honest, it's not that comfortable on either side of the fence, like to think that I was the person who judged and then to be the person who is judged. And I think it's just taught me really that it's not, everything isn't that black and white. It's sort of like issues are, how to say it? Yeah, it's more of a grey area than I thought it was. And it's probably indicative of a lot of other issues in life that we shouldn't be so quick to judge.
Yeah.
But on a lighter note, what I didn't realise I was going to have to do was
Wee wee poo poo duty?
wee wee poo poo duty. But what comes after poo poo duty with having a doodle type dog is that I have to clean its bum.
Oh no, does the poo poo get stuck in her fur?
Yeah, so I have to do daily eye bogey and bum nugget cleaning.
Gosh. I mean, I think this is just so indicative of this whole puppy craze in lockdown. People assume it's going to be an absolute bundle of joy and it's the thing that's going to rescue their kids from lockdown boredom, and then it turns out to be really, really hard. I mean, it is like almost having a child in the sense that they're so dependent on you for food and water and being let out to go to the loo, and you know, you're up in the night, and I know that you haven't slept that much, and like you said, your social life has decreased. You can't go for swims really easily. I haven't seen you.
Yeah. So I'm sure I am also keep saying, oh, it's like having a child. I'm sure people who have children are like, trust me, it's not like having a child. But I think the point is that having a puppy is actually really hard work. And, you know, I love it and I love the dog and I chose to do it. But yeah, it's not all easy going. The other thing that I thought was funny was when you were talking about your friends who call their...
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to?
She's probably listening, but I have some friends who got a puppy and started calling each other mummy and daddy, and I was just sort of chortling at that, and I found it quite funny. And I mean, because I'm quite a pragmatist. I think it's a dog.
So
at the end of the day.
Grace was laughing about how her friends call each other mummy and daddy and saying how weird it was, and Johnny and I definitely call each other mummy and daddy.
But I think if you're in a long-term relationship, it is basically like a rehearsal for having a baby. So I guess it makes sense.
She's our fluffy baby.
Yeah.
I hate it when people say fur baby, but I am that person.
You are that person.
I'm going to get hated on the internet for that.
So, lovely listeners, do tell us, email us, have you become a lockdown cliche? Have you got a puppy? Have you rescued one? And what are your thoughts?
And if you have any training advice for a little dog with a lot of attitude, please feel free to give it to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to a subject that has been very prevalent in the news this week. We wanted to discuss the Meghan and Harry interview. For anyone who hasn't seen it, in a deeply personal conversation, Meghan talks about her experiences in the royal family, including racism, mental health, how unsupported she felt by the institution, and how misrepresented she was in the media.
It's okay. Sophie from the future can rescue you if you make a mistake.
She'll be coming in a lot. If you haven't watched it yet, you can catch up with the interview on ITV.
Yes. Would you like to hear my thoughts?
Obviously,
I have many thoughts.
That's why I'm here.
So I think my opinion on all of it is essentially the same as what everyone else is saying. And that is that I totally agree that it shows the institution to be broadly racist and completely unmalleable. And I think that as a topic, it follows on really nicely from what we were talking about in our last episode regarding Britney Spears and her absolute takedown by the media. And I think Harry comes across as a man just totally traumatized by past events and therefore completely vindicated in his approach and the actions he's taken to change the course of history for his wife and his family, essentially. There are a few things that I found strange.
Yeah.
And this isn't me saying that I don't believe Meghan or that I don't agree with what she's saying, because I 100% do. But the first thing was that I found it slightly strange, I guess, for want of a better word, that she didn't research what it would be like to marry into such a backwards, old and aristocratic family.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this point a lot, and that, was she naive to come into the royal family without doing any research? And what I think is that is really putting the onus on Meghan and not the royal family. The royal family knew that they were taking into their family a woman of colour who was self-made, independent and outspoken feminist. And I think that they probably thought that the royal family would adapt and evolve and embrace Meghan a little bit more. I really think that she could have become like I think cherished asset was a term Harry used. And I think that, Meghan could have been a symbol of a modern, inclusive monarchy. And I think she could have really changed the perceptions of the royal family for like our generation and the next generation. Having a woman of colour in there who's like an outspoken feminist, it could have been so valuable for them. And I think they've lost out there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, actually. And it does show that they haven't moved with the times, that they are unmalleable and they couldn't kind of adapt or bend or change any of their, traditions to really accept her, I guess.
Yeah, so yes, maybe she was naive, but also maybe they should have evolved a little bit more.
The second thing that I felt about the interview was that it descended into gossip really quickly. I read a piece in the Sunday Times this weekend about how good an interviewer Oprah is. And she certainly manages to get a lot from her interviewees, but the quips of, did you make Kate cry, which came, really early on in the interview, and the fact that she constantly interrupted, I thought, Meghan and Harry, just for me gave a little bit of like a talk show vibe.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying and agree with most of it. I think I didn't like the bit where she was trying to, it felt like she was trying to pit Meghan against Kate in some way. And we have to remember that they are trying to make money from the TV channel and the viewings. I personally don't think it's beneficial to have like Team Meghan, Team Kate, the good and the bad. I don't think it's that black and white. However, for me, Meghan came across, very relatable. She talked about being a waitress and, I've already mentioned her being like a feminist. And yeah, I mean, I think that what was important is that it was a conversation about mental health and racist issues, not a conversation about like privilege or pitting Kate, or it shouldn't have been a conversation about pitting Kate against Meghan.
Yeah.
And I've seen that about that just being a bunch of privileged people talking to each other.
Meme. Yeah.
The meme that went around. But I think it's really important that we note that mental health affects everyone. Rich people get depressed as well, and racism transcends wealth. Yeah. And Meghan was suffering under immense pressure in silence.
Yeah. So I agree with all of that, but for me personally, I didn't find Meghan as relatable as Harry. I think what was really interesting, for me, the first half of the interview, I found, whether it's because she's an actress or she's American, but I found Meghan to be very slick and almost quite rehearsed, even though I know she was spilling the beans and information that we hadn't previously heard. And then when Harry came in and enjoyed the interview, all of a sudden for me it became so much more real, because I did not expect him to open up and kind of go in that much on members of his family, like the relationship with his dad and all of that. I just thought was like, wow, he's really like stepping out. And yeah, I don't know. And like I said, it's not me saying that I don't condemn how Meghan was clearly treated, just that watching it, that was my gut reaction. And one final thing from me that I thought of whilst watching the interview, that I really feel, again, just vindicates Harry and Meghan's actions, was the fact that Harry was filmed by the paparazzi at a really young age, walking behind his mum's coffin, where he was not allowed to cry or show any emotion, which at a really young age must have just been unbelievably hard. And then it was these same journalists and paparazzi that were involved in his mother's death, because they were chasing a car that she was driving in. And then they filmed him at her funeral. And it's just this whole cyclical, I guess, just history repeating itself in a sense. And that's what Harry has wanted to avoid. And that's why he has severed ties with his family in the way that he has. Yeah.
So my 2 pence, I think that, I really empathise with Meghan. And I think the media's character assassination of her over the last few years has had racist undertones and has been misogynist, and she hasn't been able to respond. And I think I totally get why, if you thought she came across scripted and whatever, like, I understand why she would have prepared so much for that interview. I don't think it's any surprise that the royal family is a bit racist. A significant part of their wealth was built on colonialism and slavery.
I was just going to say, I think we all instinctively understand that the royal family is racist. We just didn't expect any of them to say, like, we didn't expect that to come out of the woodwork. So when they asked about the colour of Meghan and Harry's baby, I think that was like shock moment for...
Yeah, I think that I also don't think it's probably not the royal family as in the individuals, but as in the institution.
Yeah.
And on that note, I've got a quote from Peter Tatchell in Time magazine. Whichever way the defenders of the monarchy try to spin it, there is no escaping the fact that the position of the head of state is only open to the white Windsors and their descendants. Non-white people are shut out for generations to come. This manner of determining Britain's head of state is surely an offensive, bigoted, I can't say this word, anachronism? Sophie trying to pronounce things. Anachronism. Anyway.
Sophie from the future will sort you out.
Hey Sophie, this is Sophie from the future. I'm just dropping in to let you know this is the correct way to pronounce it.
Anachronism.
Anachronism. It is premised on the assumption that even an ignorant, stupid, immoral white Windsor is more entitled to be head of state than the best informed, wisest, and most moral Black Briton, which I thought was quite heavy hitting. I also want to say that I personally love Harry, and he's one of the most relatable members of the royal family for me. He's a similar age, and I've grown up with him in the media. What stood out for me about the Harry part of the interview when he joined Meghan was when he said that he wasn't aware of racist issues until he married Meghan, who's a woman of colour.
Yeah.
And, it reminds me of this thing that when men have a daughter or get married, they're suddenly become aware of feminist issues because they have a daughter in their life, which I'm not in any way saying I think Harry's a bad person. I think a lot of us are guilty of this, only empathising when things are in some way related to us. But I just think as privileged humans, and especially someone with that much privilege, we really need to be cognizant of the issues that are oppressing others.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually, because you're right. He does so much work with the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And even around mental health as well.
Yeah,
And then,
I would have thought Harry was quite woke, but
Yeah.
wasn't woke enough to see the issues until he married her.
Yeah. Which, again, I think is not pointing fingers at him, because we all do this. Like, things only become super relevant when we are personally involved or someone we love personally is involved. So it's a lesson to everyone, isn't it, really?
Yeah, about empathising with people, even if they're not, directly, if you can't relate it to yourself. Self? My pronunciation today is excellent.
We're both not doing very well today. It's just tough all right.
Should we lighten it up with some... Should we lighten it up with a jingle?
Vagina,
Vulva,
labia,
clitoris,
notorious,
V-A-G.
Vagina facts. My vagina fact is one that I feel like everyone will already know, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's very, very important. And that is that the vagina is self-cleaning. Did you know this, Sophie?
Yes, but only because we talk about vaginas a lot. So tell the people who don't know.
Well, vaginas are self-cleaning and they do not need smelly bath salts and femme fresh. And you would like to tell me about your... Tell me?
Yeah, so, okay, I do know about this, but I didn't know about this a few years ago because I have a friend who... She buys pessaries, and I had no idea what these were, but they're basically like frozen ice cubes with essential oils and whatever else in, and she puts them in her vagina, so her vagina then smells like essential oils and flowers and deliciousness, in case anyone were to put their nose down there.
But the vagina's not supposed to smell like flowers. It's full of it's teeming with bacteria, essentially, and it's the bacteria that are in the vagina that keep it really healthy and happy. And then when we use these washes and stuff, even if they are quote unquote pH balanced, they do upset. It is a really delicate balance. Just like, how many times have you had thrush or BV in your life?
So just for some practical advice here to make sure I'm doing it right, do I just get a bar of soap and rub it around the labia?
No, you don't need soap.
Nothing. You just surely got to clean in there, clean the vulva a little bit,
just with warm water. Yeah.
Okay.
It's self-cleaning. You really don't need.
So I don't need any soap down there at all.
No.
Oops.
But I mean, you'll know. Sophie. You'll know.
Okay.
I mean, you'll know if you have a problem because you'll get some sort of.
Yeah, and I've had BV and thrush before, so
yeah,
maybe because I'm cleaning it too much.
And last week, I was going to say last week's episode, in the episode that was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the vaginal microbiome, and that's the thing. It's totally linked. So you don't want to disrupt that microbiome with washes and stuff in the same way that you don't want to disrupt your gut microbiome with antibiotics and bad food choices.
So I know we laughed about why we are doing this segment, but actually misinformation about the vagina is widespread and can be dangerous. And the reality is most people with a vagina, myself included, do not know much about vaginas.
Wait, the vagina can be dangerous, or the misinformation?
No, the misinformation.
I love the idea that vaginas can be dangerous.
Did I say vaginas can be dangerous?
No, you didn't. I'm just twisting your words.
There is that film with the one with the teeth. That you know the one?
No.
We'll come back to that.
What's your vagina fact?
So my vagina fact is one that hopefully some people are already aware of, and it's one that I share on my Instagram quite a lot. It's about the clitoris. Nod at me if you know it.
It's very big.
So the clitoris is not just the bit you see on the outside. That's just the glands. The clit is in fact about 10 centimetres long, and it extends down through the sides of the labia. The only way... Do you pronounce it labia or labia?
Labia.
Okay, well,
but we know that you pronounce a lot of things in a very strange way.
So I can describe. It looks a bit like a wishbone going down either side. It's made of the same erectile tissue as a penis, and if you're lucky enough to have had an orgasm recently, you may have noticed that your labia gets like puffy and swollen and plump. And this is because of those bulbs running down either side. It's essentially the female erection.
Yeah.
So those people who come through penetrative sex. It's basically because they have a larger or more sensitive legs, bulbs. And what else is very interesting in there is that it's now thought the G-spot does not exist. So all of our life, the Glamour magazine, Heat magazine, all these articles about the G-spot, it doesn't exist. It's just part of the clitoris. So yeah.
We should talk about that on the next episode, because I definitely fell victim to that when I was a young girl. Like you say, reading those magazines, thinking like, oh, there's this magical...
Hunting for the magical, mystical, mythical G-spot.
Yeah.
It's just the clitoris, guys.
Amazing. Good facts. I'll have to dig around my barrel of vagina facts for the next episode. I feel like you're brimming over with interesting things to say.
So I feel like we need to create a jingle for this. It's a regular segment, and it's things that we disagree on. Grace and I agree on a lot. We basically dress like twins, and
fashion is probably the thing that we agree on the most, I would say.
Well, we agree on a lot of things. We like swimming and Joe Wicks, and anyway, but we were conscious that we didn't want to be an echo chamber, so we'd also discuss things that we thought quite differently about. So if we have a jingle, we'll do it here. Oat milk.
Cinnamon!
Ugh, cinnamon.
Veganism!
Me. Sun cream.
Yes, sun cream.
Using a towel.
Dirt in general. Agree to disagree.
Things we disagree on.
Agree to disagree.
Things we disagree on. So I know Oatly is a divisive topic for us. I drink a lot of it, and Grace recently did a podcast about why Oatly barista.
I coached you on this before. It's barista.
Is particularly bad for our health. So without going into any heated debate, I wanted to explain a little bit about Amendment 171 and just hear your thoughts on it, if any. Full disclosure, I did join forces with Oatly last week to promote this because I do believe in the campaign. So last year, European Parliament voted yes to Amendment 171, which basically means that plant-based products can't make any reference to dairy products in their packaging, e.g. Oatly writing, "Wow, no cow." And it also means that they won't be able to make any climate impact comparisons. So, for example, they won't be able to say, this butter has half the carbon emissions of a dairy butter. The reason behind 171 is essentially to protect the dairy industry. But in my opinion, it's just going to keep us over-consuming industrially produced dairy and stop the plant-based industry growing, despite the fact scientists say the dairy industry is a disaster for the environment. I thought it'd be quite an interesting one to discuss because I always come at this from the perspective of the environment and sustainability and also animal welfare.
Yeah.
And you come at it from the perspective of nutritionist and health. So any thoughts?
But also from the position of the environment as well, which I'll go into. But yes, I just wanted to say firstly that people might find funny that the other morning when I opened my phone first thing, the first thing that got me on Instagram was Sophie Hellyer in her Oatly t-shirt promoting Oatly. And I was like, for fuck's sake. And it is funny how we sit on very different sides of the fence. So I think there's things in there that I do agree with, but I also feel like it misses the whole question of regenerative agriculture and regenerative farming being actually the best way to create a sustainable future of food production. For example, the Oatly barista milk is not organic. So the oats that they use in that potentially are, being sprayed with glyphosate and other chemicals, which then runs off into the water streams and contributes to soil degradation. And going on from that, even the organic ones it's still a monocrop. It's still lacking in diversity. It still contributes to this idea of, the vegan movement and the plant-based movement is requiring huge amounts of monocropped soy and deforestation. And I am really passionate about soil health, as I know you are too. And actually, although we consume quite different foods, we are really aligned on the fact that we think that, regenerative, grass-fed, local, small, and is the most sustainable option.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both really agree that regenerative organic dairy farming is not an issue. And that, yes, the monoculture of oats is causing, it's contributing towards a lack of biodiversity and isn't necessarily good for soil health. However, the reason, Amendment 171 for me shouldn't be passed into law is that I think that hiding climate impact comparisons is dangerous. The EU's own sustainability goals, it's kind of completely contradictory to them to hide.
Yeah.
And if anything, why aren't regenerative organic dairy farms using this to their advantage? And why aren't they also doing climate impact comparisons or writing about soil health on their packaging and their marketing?
Well, I think they probably are trying to, but Oatly have got a fuck ton of money behind them, excuse my language, and also incredible copywriters and marketeers that have created this insane brand and this lifestyle brand that everyone wants to be a part of because it is super cool. And I will also say, and again, we agree on this, that boiling it down to carbon emissions is way too narrow.
Simplistic.
It's way too simplistic because it is actually about soil health. It's about biodiversity. We have, I think we have 60 years of good quality topsoil left in which to grow produce, which is really, really shocking. And if we keep going the way we are with industrial scale agriculture, in 60 years' time, we'll be consuming foods that have very low nutrition value in them because the soil that they've grown in is not healthy, essentially.
Yeah, so I think we probably also both agree on the fact that industrially produced dairy is a no-go, bad for the environment, bad for our health.
Yeah.
We're not into it.
We're not into it, no.
So don't know if we disagreed or not, but...
Interesting. I mean, it's definitely an interesting... And I should have read your Instagram post.
I said to Grace, I'm going to talk about Amendment 171, and she was like, oh, cool, because I didn't listen to your Instagram thing about it. This episode is sponsored by Treedom, the only online platform in the world where you can have someone plant a tree for you and then follow it online. Every tree is planted, photographed and geolocated so you can follow its story.
Treedom ensure that every tree planted brings social benefits as well as environmental ones. Not only do the trees protect biodiversity and help with global CO2 absorption, they also provide direct funding and training in sustainable land management to local farmers.
Treedom also contributes to 10 of the Sustainable Development Goals, a collection of 17 global goals set by the United Nations to end poverty and protect the planet.
Head to treedom.net and use the discount code TWOSCOMPANY, all in capitals, for 10% off at the checkout. The code can be used once per person and expires at the end of 2021. Thank you very much to Treedom.
Thanks, Treedom. Plant more trees.
So moving on, we are going to talk about things we've been enjoying and reading and watching and gobbling up over the last week. One thing that I've actually found to be a very positive outcome of starting Two's Company with you is that I am much more engaged in... Well, I'm just reading more and I'm absorbing more. And also Nick, every time he reads something or watches something, he's like, oh, you could talk about this on Two's Company. So it really has enriched me and that's been really good.
Johnny does that too. He keeps going, oh, you should talk about this, you should talk about that. It's like, whoa, too many subjects.
We need to have a spin-off, Nick and Johnny.
I know, maybe they can have Johnny said, oh, if you and I have children, or we all have children, then maybe Nick and Johnny should do a dad's podcast.
Yeah. That would be really great. So, Soph, what have you been enjoying?
So this week, I know that we've both just started reading Pandora Sykes' book, How Do We Know We're Doing It Right? It's a collection of wise and witty essays questioning the perceived wisdom of a modern life and asking whether anybody really knows what they're talking about. Chapter 1. So we haven't finished it. Full transparency.
Yeah.
Full transparency.
We've only read the first chapter.
We've only read the first chapter, but I wanted to talk about it because it's a rather frank and unabashed look at the wellness industry. And I personally, I agreed with half of it. I disagreed with the other half. Some of it made me think about things in a new way, but I thought that Grace Kingswell may have a lot to say on it.
Yeah, my gut reaction was just like, I was just kind of annoyed. Like by the end of this chapter, I really felt like it was very condemnatory to all wellness trends, and I felt like that she references a few people of authority in this first chapter, and both those people are staunch kind of intuitive eating dietitians, and I personally find the intuitive eating movement to be just absolutely ridiculous, because if I ate intuitively, I just eat sourdough and jam all day long, and
I'd eat salt and vinegar crisps.
Yeah,
and
that's
Cocoa
just
Pops.
not good for me. And I don't think we can ever eat intuitively in the 21st century, because there's just way too much crap at our disposal. And I think that this standpoint and this take on wellness and diet trends in general suits Pandora, because it vindicates the way that she wants to live her life. And I found it frustrating, as someone that sees really unwell people in my clinic on a daily basis, to hear someone so kind of callously disregard wellness trends that can actually be really transformative. And I'm not suggesting that we all stick rose quartz up our vaginas like Gwyneth Paltrow would have us believe. But actually, sometimes people do need to ditch gluten and dairy and eat diets that are a bit, quote unquote, strange for a time being, if they're either trying to figure out if they have severe allergies or if they're healing their gut from chronic dysbiosis. And there was one quote in particular that I wanted to read. And she says, "I find the homogenization of wellness as if we can all afford to make the same choices, as if we even want to, equal parts infuriating and concerning, particularly when it comes to the demonization of basic foodstuffs like bread, pasta and cow's milk, which are cheap and easily accessible staples for many households. The most mainstream food trend is the avoidance of wheat. Whilst writing this sentence, I receive a press release regarding the launch of a podcast about why we can't stomach bread anymore."
I wonder if that was your podcast.
Which is privileged. Okay, this is the bit that gets me. Which is privileged pseudoscience, says Rosie Saunt, unless you have a diagnosed intolerance or celiac disease. This is just simply not true. It is true that less than 1% of the population have celiac as a diagnosis, but far, far, far more many than that have real issues with gluten. And actually, it's not just about digestive health. Gluten will affect every tissue in your body. The proteins in gluten cross-react with proteins in your brain. You can get brain fog, you can get depression. It's not just about having bloating or, tummy troubles. I think she's right in the sense that it's an easily available foodstuff, but we have to remember that we have changed. Our bodies are much more stressed. We live in much more polluted and toxic environments, and our capability to actually digest the really big proteins in gluten and dairy is much reduced these days. And actually, as humans, we can't digest those proteins. They are too big for us. And so therefore, for some people, you will have an immune reaction to gluten or dairy, and that can be damaging.
So I have next to no nutritional input because I am not educated on that. But what I will say is that although you disagree with that, what I did really appreciate was the next sentence in that chapter, which says, with 29% of adults and 20% of children classified as obese in England, food is clearly a pressing political issue. But it's also a complex one, and it has much more in common with poverty than it does with the consumption of cow's milk. Social inequality cannot be saved by wellness, at least not in its current form.
Which I agree with.
What I also found quite fun, and also I love Pandora, but she's quite negative about the wellness industry. And I found it like a little checklist at the start when she says... So basically, Soul Cycle, no. Acai, no. And then meditation, yes. Yoga, yes. Oat milk, yes. Bulletproof coffee, nah. Eggs up your nunu, nah. Orgasms, yes. Turmeric lattes, yes. Activated charcoal. No. Anyway, it goes on with all these wellness trends, and I quite enjoyed being like, yep. No, I think I'm about 50% wellness nerd.
Yeah, you're really right. She is so disparaging about wellness, and I've heard her give this opinion out on podcasts and things before. And I just think, look, each to their own. If it helps you and it makes you feel better, and you genuinely feel like your mental health is positively impacted by swapping your morning builder's tea to a turmeric latte, then I just think I'm all for it. So
yeah, and. Yeah.
I was just going to say it's not black and white, and I think that first chapter paints it as being very black and white.
Yeah. The part that did make me stop and think was the part about mindfulness. As someone who uses the Headspace app and has promoted it before, this made me really stop. Modern mindfulness has its critics. Many question the secularization and commodifying of the Buddhist Dharma or teachings. Ron Purser, the author of Brilliantly Brutal Mindfulness, notes that the mass marketing of Buddhist practice wouldn't be tolerated with any other religion. Imagine taking something from Jewish culture and then selling it as something made much better, but without any of the mumbo-jumbo of Jewishness. And I'd never personally thought about like the meditation in that way, that I'm like, or the headspace thing, that I'm kind of taking this part of Buddhism and not using the rest of it. But she does also then go on to say, are we to exclude people from discovering the benefits of a calm mind? So
yeah, and are you? Because you're not taking on the religious element of the meditation.
No, but mindfulness is a part of Buddhism, and we've basically like nitpicked a part of it that we like. And claimed it as a commodified wellness trend. So, yeah, there were parts of it that really made me stop and think. So if any of the listeners want to read along with us, TBC, and we'll come back when we've finished the book and give it a little review.
Yes.
Also, I learnt this week how to pronounce Billie Eilish.
Yes, well done!
Thanks. Along with words that Sophie can't pronounce, you have been saying Billie Eilish.
I think we should have a whole portion of the segment in like a year's time, when we've been doing the podcast for ages.
All the things I
no, we just round up and make it into a song, all of your strange words.
I can't pronounce things very good. So Billie Eilish is... Yeah. New documentary, The World's a Little Blurry, basically takes a candid look at the chaotic life of a young pop star. I personally really, really enjoyed the film because I thought it was great that it was an open conversation about mental health. I found her very relatable. The family were so humble, living in the same house after they've won 6 Grammys. I really didn't know that much about her before the documentary. I knew a couple of songs, and, now I know a lot about her, and I love her music, and we'll listen to it in a very different way now.
Interesting that you called it a film. Was that just a mistake, or did you feel like it gave you that? Okay, because this is one of my points.
Okay, go on.
That I feel like, I'll come into it, but basically I just wanted to say that I also really enjoyed this documentary, and have since, same as you, really and properly listened to her album a few times, which I love. And the first thing that stood out for me was her ruthless confidence, and I have no doubt that that's one of the main reasons for her huge success. And it's hard, I think it's hard for us as millennials of a certain age, in our 30s, to understand really what it's like to grow up and be a teenager in the current climate. But I certainly feel like the tides have changed somewhat with regards to having a voice and a presence on the global stage. And I think that's largely down to social media. I mean, she's got, 77 million?
I know. She said that she went from 1 million followers to 16 million followers in less than a year.
Yeah, which is just crazy. And she's really outspoken, and she's really sure of her own beliefs. But what kind of, I felt, undercut this or juxtapose this in the documentary is that her mum says that growing up now is scary and confusing and really difficult. And I think what we see is that that's really reflected in her admissions that she actually doesn't think she's very good, and she doesn't know how to write a hit, and she lacks confidence in those areas.
Yeah, and you started off that by saying that she's really confident, but actually, yes, when she is on stage, like in my notes when I was watching it, I just wrote like, wow, what a powerhouse, like what a girl, what a woman.
Yeah.
She is unbelievable on stage. But what you actually saw, like that candid look at actually how self-conflicted she is, and how she thinks that, she hates writing songs and she thinks she's no good at it. And like actually...
Yeah, and she doesn't want to write a hit because she's too woke to the fact that, and she's too much of a presence on social media to want to write a hit, because she kind of sees writing a hit as being quite uncool and quite quite daggy in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, she talked a lot about being scared to do things because she knew that the internet would take her down. And it's, similar to what I said about the start of the podcast. It's like fear of judgment and cancel culture and knowing that you could say or do one thing wrong and the whole internet could like turn against you and you could lose your career and platform. And
but then that
really
being
scary,
said,
like so vulnerable.
Yeah, but then there's one point where her label really want her to write something that's more accessible, and they tell Phineas, her brother, that, and they don't really tell her because they know that she'll say, I don't want to be accessible, I'm just kind of like writing this for me. And she stands her ground and she justifies her depressing lyrics with the truth that she's depressed and often suicidal, which
did she talk about being suicidal? She definitely talked about self-harm.
was she maybe I'm wrong, but there's that bit where she's looking through her diary.
Oh, yeah, there
and
was
she's
a
saying,
section where she's saying,
and
I don't want to be
also
alive
there's
or
her
something.
song that just goes, I want to end me. And that's the refrain, is I want to end me.
Yeah, I mean, one of the standout quotes for me was that part where her mum was saying, it's a really horrible time to be a teenager. And I think, I totally agree. Thank God we're not teenagers. I think you and I'm 33, you're a little bit younger. I think we just scraped through. I certainly did. Like, social media wasn't really a thing when I was a teenager. Mobile phones had just come out. Like, we still had somewhat more of a childhood.
We didn't need to be so self-aware.
No, and I wasn't worried about the whole world judging me because it was only the people in my school class, and it was a very small community of people that you knew back then. And now it's like the vulnerability of being on this like world platform all the time. It's terrifying.
And I think also that as the wife of a songwriter, I could totally understand what she meant when she said that she hates the process of songwriting. Like, she has the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings, but actually marshalling them into a song is so taxing emotionally. And I think this is really where her brother, who in my opinion is the kind of unsung hero of the whole outfit, really comes into play, because Phineas, firstly, he's an artist in his own right. He writes and releases music and performs, but he's also an absolute weapon of a producer. And I think just gives that edge of maturity in a way that Billie kind of needs to help guide her over the line of like actually finishing the record. And
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think her brother is a musical genius, and I think that they are quite the duo. It'll be interesting to see how their career progresses. As in the documentary, as we saw it, she was just at the age where she'd passed her driving license and got her first car. How will that relationship progress as they move into different houses and get partners and kind of aren't living under the same roof? We'll see.
And I know that you also love the bit where she meets Orlando Bloom, and she doesn't know who she is, which I just think is great. Grace, Orlando Bloom is a he, not a she. Yeah. And then the bit where she meets Justin Bieber.
Oh, I loved the bit about her and Justin Bieber.
I know.
I
wanted to ask you, so you were going to explain, and I should have let you do that just then, that she meets Justin Bieber and he's basically like her idol, and it's like this insane moment in her life. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, is there anyone that you were that obsessed with when you were younger, like growing up, in the same way that her whole world just imploded when she met him?
So no, and I think part of this is because that we didn't have that social media and that same connection.
Right.
Me, I've loved Justin Timberlake's music and I thought he was cute and a good dancer, but what I saw of him was like, if I went to a friend's house and they had MTV, I might see a music video and I might read like a poster of him in Ms. magazine or something. Like, it wasn't the same connection. There wasn't all this information. You couldn't just slide into someone's DMs. Like, it wasn't as celebrities weren't as accessible when I was growing up, and so I was never like obsessed and truly in love with anyone like that. I'm trying to think if there would.
I was quite obsessed with Michael Flatley.
I don't know who that is.
Lord of the Dance, the Irish dancer.
I still don't know who that is.
Okay, I'll educate you. That, to be fair, that is really niche. And my final sort of closing thought on this is that it actually made me question the whole exercise and fabrication of making a documentary, especially as we know that she's so self-aware, like such a self-aware teenager. I wonder how self-aware she was being and whether there was any like playing up to the camera, because again, like Nick and I were discussing this in the kitchen, and he made a comment growing up that when, as a young musician, he obviously had idols like Keith Urban and stuff, and they would never have dreamt of commissioning a documentary about themselves because it would have been seen as being like kind of very big-headed and egotistical, and if you were to watch it, you would always think, oh, well, is this real? Like, they know that there's someone making a documentary about them, but then I guess that's just the world we live in these days with social media. Like, we just have, she's so used to cameras and followers and...
So I don't know if she was playing up to the cameras. I mean, personally, I felt like it was a very candid, realistic look. It followed her for several years. And I think it gave quite like an honest, to me, the documentary came across as if there wasn't really an agenda, you know. I don't feel like it was anyone pushing any kind of specific message or anything. It was just like a look into the hectic life of a young girl in the eye of fame.
Yeah. I actually do have one more thing to say, sorry, I just thought of. The day after watching the documentary, I got the paper, as I usually do on a Sunday, and there was a piece on the front page or the second page about how the incidence of tics and, you know, Tourette's-like symptoms has massively increased in young girls, and especially during lockdown. And there's a quote, I'll find it and link it in the show notes, saying, before the pandemic, the 2 specialist clinics in London saw about 200 cases a year, 80% of which were boys aged 7 to 12. No more than 6 teenage girls arrived with tics in the course of a normal year. Now they see 3 or 4 a week. And I just wondered, could be totally wrong, stabbing in the dark, but whether this has anything to do with Billie being so public about her tics. I mean, she does have 77.3 million followers. And I just thought that was a really interesting... Obviously, lockdown has been massively stressful for people in so many ways. But I just thought that was really interesting. And certainly when I was watching the documentary, I found that quite... Not shocking's not the right word, but I didn't know that about her. And I think it's amazing and brave that she was so open about it. And
God, I think it was a very brave documentary to put out there. I think, you know, I was talking about how anxious I felt about an episode of a podcast coming out and like a few hundred people or whatever listening to it, for her knowing that was going out about her. Like, I bet she's been absolutely breaking it about that coming out.
Or maybe not. She seems like totally...
Maybe not. Maybe she's like you and she's a bit like, nah, whatever. No, I think she's quite conflicted with people's opinions.
Yeah.
I also, just reflecting back on, you know, we discussed Britney Spears in episode 1 and not comparing them in any way, because I think that, you know, Billie really is a true musician, but one of the things that really stood out to me is how she absolutely like goes out of her way to not use sex appeal to sell, like on all her outfits and the styling. And, you know, I wrote in my notes as I was watching it, just like, that's so cool. I wish I had her as a role model when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But we didn't, you know, we had Britney.
That's a really interesting point. Anything else? What else have you been loving this week?
I know that you read, did you want to?
There was something in the Style magazine that really just validated everything I was saying about tracksuits on the last episode.
Says Grace Kingswell, currently wearing a tracksuit.
You're wearing leggings, so I just feel like, you know. But so yeah, firstly there was a piece in the Style saying that tracksuits are back, and I just wanted to let you all know. And there was another bit about wearing a bra as a top. So the thing is, you wear like a cardigan and then underneath you wear like a little bralette. And there was a whole piece written by I think a 40-something woman, or maybe she was in her late 30s, about, you know, is this okay? Can I wear a bra in public?
Yeah, I don't believe in dressing for your age, but I did see it, and the first thing I said was, I'm too old for that.
Yeah, I know.
But
it's like me feeling like I'm too old for low-slung bikinis these days, and that I can only really wear high-waisted.
I was about to say, I love a high-waisted. It's all about keeping your midriff warm, isn't it?
Yeah.
I sound like my grandma.
Yeah, but then, you know, practicality first.
You've got mail.
In our mailbag this week, we had one question asking how we met Grace.
This is a good one. So I can't remember if Amy Fuller told me about you first, or whether No, she did. Thanks to Amy Fuller, our mutual friend.
Olympic snowboarder.
Ex-GB Olympic snowboarder and really rad girl. I went swimming with her at the Hampstead Heath Ponds, and I sort of had to drag her in, I'll be honest. She doesn't really enjoy cold water. And afterwards she said, you should meet my mate Sophie Hellyer. She really likes getting cold. And at this stage, I didn't really know any other girls in London who wanted to go swim with me. So I sort of stalked her on the internet for a bit. And then I thought, she'd be a really good podcast guest for my podcast. So I slid into your DMs and I said, hey, do you want to go for a swim with me? And you said yes. And then I think I emailed you, and you have a Hotmail email address.
Yeah, this is in your first email to me. You took the mickey out of me for having a Hotmail.
I was trying to be cool.
So what you don't know is
you're an influencer.
Grace was trying to be cool and was like, haha, you've got Hotmail. How old school. Actually, my partner had been mocking me for having Hotmail, and like lots of people comment on it. And I think that might have been around the time where I was like, oh God, it's actually like really uncool and I really need to get a Gmail address. So now I have a Gmail address, but I still use my Hotmail one.
Yeah, I just thought I was making like a really fun joke and it might make me seem approachable. And then you might think, this girl sounds cool. I'll go on her podcast.
So we were both living in London. And actually, at that stage, I just moved down to Putney Bridge, so we were kind of near each other at the time. And the first time we ever met was to record a podcast.
Yeah.
So that's come a nice little full circle,
Yeah, and
hasn't
you
it?
got really lost. Do you remember? I had to like run out and find you.
Yeah, because I think I rented a Boris bike and cycled over.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was that. It's just funny that. Oh, and then obviously after that we met up and went swimming in Hampstead Ponds.
Yep.
And then I basically made you move to Cornwall so that you would come swimming with me.
Yeah, when everyone always says, why did you move to Cornwall? I just say Sophie Hellyer made me do it.
So we met thanks to the powers of a mutual friend, Amy. Love you.
Oh, love you. I was looking at my notes. Sorry, Ames.
And another question. I'm going to dig it out. Hold on.
I scribbled down a few that we had.
Oh,
Do you
you
want
go
me to
quick fire while I get this one out
we
of the mailbag.
had a really great one about eating for your vagina, which I just love. I'm going to write a blog post called Eating for Your Vagina. I just think that's great.
So hang on. Basically, the question is...
The question is to do with BV, bacterial vaginosis, and is if there's anything you can do naturally to help.
In the same way that you eat healthily for your gut, should you be eating certain foods to have a healthy pH in your vagina?
Yeah.
That was the question.
So it's less about the pH, it's more about the vaginal microbiome. And what I would say is that the vaginal microbiome is very linked to the gut microbiome, and it's all like one lovely symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeasts and things. So anything that you're doing to improve your gut health will ultimately improve your vaginal health. So a diet that's low in sugar and processed foods and grains, loads and loads of different types of plant fibers. So between like 30 and 50 a week is amazing if you can get that many in. Diversity, colour, abundance, like eating the rainbow every single day, including fermented foods, and not washing your vagina with soap.
Your vagina.
Yes, let's write and release a song on Spotify called Eating for Your Vagina.
Anyway, another question. There was one from one of your pals that was our holiday bucket list.
Holiday bucket list. We live in a holiday destination.
Yeah, we don't really need to go on holiday because we are very, very lucky to live in a beautiful part of Cornwall.
I would like to be able to go with Nick and to visit his Australian family. His family in Australia.
Yay, you pronounced something wrong too.
Oh, I'm very tired today. But yeah, no real bucket list. No bucket lists.
Cool. If you have any other questions for our mailbag, however frivolous or weighty, please do get in touch with us with Two's Company Shiz, that's SHIZ, at gmail.com. Gmail, because we're cool.
Yeah, and sorry we didn't answer everyone's questions this week. We feel like we have covered quite a lot today, and we're probably getting to the stage where we should wrap things up.
Yeah, I'm going to let Grace do the outro because she's a bit of a pro at this.
Haven't even I'm going to riff on it. Thank you so much again for tuning in to Two's Company with Sophie and I. We absolutely love talking to you. If you haven't done so already, please do head on over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a rave review and a cheeky 5 stars, because it really, really helps us get the podcast heard by more people, which is really what we want to do. And a big thanks again to Treedom for sponsoring this episode. Head to our show notes for the link to their website and a unique code for a cheeky little discount.
And I also wanted to say thank you to Nick Kingswell, who makes all of our jingles come to life.
Yes, thanks, Nick.
Two's Company, Two's Company, Two's Company, Two's Company, Two's Company, Two's Company. But not 3, that's too much company.
Nailed it.